Good morning from Maryland, USA. It's really nice to hear all the presentations. So far I did not receive any discussion topics. So anyway, I will raise some of the questions. Okay. When the winery start to produce the grapes, the wine, and they harvest the grapes, doing all the process, and then after fermentation for period of time, then they produce the quality products. And as Andreea, you mentioned, all kind of the measures can be used to control the pH. So mainly pH is the most important factors for the quality products. And you also mentioned all kinds of the measures that can be applied. Now I'm wondering, in the industry, since we already did so much research related to wine production and those measures, and we also basically there's so much data available there, and then the IP systems. Whether suppose we are going to start a new winery in Maryland, and that is the case. Okay, right now in Maryland we have over 100 wineries. When I was the dean of the college in 2005, at that time only 30 wineries. So in less than 20 years, that is basically 3 times increase. So suppose a new winery is going to be established, and can they use the IP, integrate all the information you learned or we learned, and to prepare from the very beginning to the end of the wine production. So then you can try to prevent those potential hazard situations.
I mean, I'm not familiar with IP myself, but I assume you're talking about like a system of well, yes and no, because wines are very different, and that's why winemaking is a science as much as it is an art.
Right.
You can have recommendations, you can have suggestions for certain situations, but it's really up to the winemaker to make those decisions and take the wine stylistically where they would. So particularly, I'm thinking in the case of natural wines where minimal intervention is made. Those wineries or those winemakers will not adjust pH, for example. So you can recommend it, I can recommend it, but if their operating model is natural wines, then they're not going to do it. So at least in that situation, I would like them to be aware of the risks that they are exposing themselves to with high pH wine. So this is a very narrow category of wines. It's getting bigger because of climate change. We have a lot of them here in Texas. Maryland, I doubt that it has that. But the question, I suppose, can be applied to any other kind of winemaking process, not necessarily malolactic fermentation or high pH wine. So the recommendations can be made, kind of a structured workflow. I believe they already exist, but there's a lot of freedom within that, and a lot of flexibility and variability based on winemaking styles, philosophies, goals, consumer who they're targeting. So it's not a clear-cut approach.
So basically it's an art.
It truly is. It truly is.
It is. I know. I know. Yeah. I mean, okay. My department of the college, we are going to start a new fermentation science program starting this semester. And the first thing I need to do is I need to hire 2 instructors to
Mhm.
teach undergraduate students those courses.
Mhm.
And then, of course, there will be labs.
Mhm.
And then eventually we should have somebody like you at Texas A&M, to teach and also do research, right? Not just the instructor and do that. So, right now I'm facing some of the challenge. The upper administration, they give us limited money to hire instructor. But if I'm talking about long-term goal, I should think about research and potential donations, all those kinds of things. Then I need to hire people do research, and then to teach the student, because some of the student eventually they want to be the technician in some of the winery and making that big high salaries, right? So that kind of the instructor's quality is important. Yeah.
What kind of instructor quality
Mhm.
for this particular type of
Development.
I would say some hands-on experience is very important for an instructor. So previous practical experience, because it gives you an insight into what it really means to make wine. There's a difference between the theoretical aspect and the actual happenings in the winery. And having done both, I've been a commercial winemaker for several years before I joined academia. So having done both has given me an insight into the winemaking world. So I kind of get a sense of the realities of that. So I can target my approach based on that. So that gives you a real world, experience. So I think that would be important. And what else? Of course, knowledge of the subject matter, that goes without saying, but this practical experience, I think it's very important. Or at least a willingness to stay in contact with the wineries, communicate with them, and learn from them.
Yeah. So I will continue the conversation with you. Maybe someday you can think about coming this way too.
Well, my pleasure to talk to you further about this. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Now.
Oh, one more comment. I came to Texas A&M in 2017, so 5 years ago. At that time, there were 234 wineries in the state. Today, we have 770. Just as that's 5 years. That's 5 years in Texas.
3 times in 5 years. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. That's all.
Thank you. Now we talk about the technology convergence, and it's not only happened to the wine research area or wine production area. It happened to many of the food science area too. Recently my postdoc, we are doing some of the food technology, food science, and now we collaborate more with the faculty from engineering. Okay, from the College of Engineering, many of them in the material science, and they are trying to expand their research area. In the food science, we talk about the package. The way we package the food will preserve the food and also the quality, safety of the food, all those kinds of things. And apparently material science professors, their idea can help or something like that. So this is happening everywhere. And the presentation of Dr. Wang, and it seems, you show those slides, and the people from different area, different talents cross the border and get into the winery patent productions. So that's another example of the importance of multidisciplinary collaborations, and for the research, government support research area too. Okay, so do you have more to comments about your presentations.
Okay, it's my pleasure to attend this conference about this study. Yeah, yes, in my team, in the National Taiwan University, we build the academic paper database. And we also build the patent database, includes United States patents, include the European Patent Office, of course, it includes the Taiwan patent database, and we try to find out the linkage, the connection between academic research and the industry technology. We try to find out is there any pilot study could observe from the journal papers, and is it effect or it's adapt in the industry, and we can find out from the citation reference in patent document. Yes, we always do this to find out the technology trends, the technology front. But in agriculture, it's a mature industry. But we try to find the key person. For example, we are finding the is there any inventor, any talent come from other industry into the agriculture industry to lead the smart agriculture development, and this key person come from which industry, and we try to find out the result, and then maybe we can we can have a suggestion to our government to find this person, even this talent from university, and we can invite them to build a national team to help our agriculture industry development. Yes, it's now the important topics in my team. Yes.
I mean, this multidisciplinary collaboration is important, and the people appreciate, understand that. However, to put the team together is a challenge.
Yeah.
A lot of times, for example, I know what I'm doing. I may need something. However, the people around me, they have some knowledge, but whether they are interested in the collaboration or not. So, for example, recently my university, the provost, the vice president research, they put out $30 million and encourage the faculty to form the team, okay, and trying to establish this kind of the collaborations. So, for example, 3 of my departmental faculties, they team up with the professors in engineering and try to prepare the proposal. So there should be certain kind of the incentive, whether from the university, from the government, or whatever, and to establish this kind of team. Yeah.
Yeah. In our research methodology, we built the collaboration network based on co-authorship or co-inventor, and we can find out the key person among some teams in different institutes, and that key person will be the importance. We must invite it to participate our team. and to participate the development team. Yeah, we in our research we take this methodology.
Okay, Dr. Baker and your team members, thank you for participation. And you gave the presentation several months ago, but I think the audience this time may not have much chance to know that. Do you mind to talk a little bit about your previous presentation? And so people may ask some questions. Thank you.
I just introduced my colleagues to postdocs in our program in Department of Ag Leadership, Education, and Communications. My interest when Dr. Patrick Stover hired me to come to Texas A&M was to look at functional foods and consumer evaluation of messages of functional foods. So we work directly with consumers in messaging. And the team just finished a study using an amino acid-based alternative to cured meat, an innovation coming out of our meat science program that would decrease the nitrate in cured meat. So to me, this all fits together because I can't think of wine fermentation without having sausage and cheese and throw in a few mushrooms and it's a nice idea. But it's really interesting. We had randomly assigned 266 students from Texas A&M. So these are a very specialized group of students, but we say this is the group, this is a powerful consumer group in the future, and tested two different messages. One message was more conversational. The other message was more scientific. And we tested 4 different informational sources on this particular innovation. We didn't find any difference in message, whether they're scientific or more consumer oriented, but we did find significant differences in trust and likely purchase and credibility based upon the speaker of the video. And this was video consumption of 4 different people speaking: a consumer, a meat scientist, a livestock producer, and who was the other? A reporter, a general reporter. Same person playing the character of all 4. And we found with this specialty sausage that was cured alternatively to decrease the nitrate level and increase the protein level, that credibility of the speaker was the most important variable in explaining potential adoption. So we're very interested in, of course, depending on the wine, whether it's geared towards a very high-end consumer or the general consumer, and the fermentation process and the level of sophistication of the consumer, we do think, regardless, that it's important that our scientists be better communicators and can speak to consumers that they're targeting.
I would agree 100%, yes. But also there needs to be a will and a organized effort to bring the scientists in front of the consumers, because we as scientists so many times are kind of hidden away in our labs. And how do we get in front of consumers, and how do we communicate what we're trying to communicate? But yes, I agree with you that scientists need to be able to communicate clearly and in a language that reaches the consumer rather than an academic audience.
Yes.
So in that case, does this idea going to affect the function of the professors at the universities? We are talking about publications, tenure promotion, and sometimes patterns. And then a lot of our publications, our findings, not necessarily, effectively communicated with the audience. So it seems the extension educator is very critical, trying to simplify our research findings and convey to the audience in an effective, understandable way of sharing the new knowledge. Yeah.
And if I might jump in,
Yeah.
a couple of my colleagues are looking very closely at social engagement of research. We got a couple of things going on. Number one, we're working with undergraduates in a program we call Science Influencers. How do we influence the next generation of scientists?
Yes.
Which those types of programs are very exciting to us in terms of teaching them at a younger age at the baccalaureate level, and these are students have every desire to go on to a master's or a PhD program. And number two, we're looking at this whole notion of not only academic impact based on academic analytics that are important to us at Texas A&M, but also social engagement based upon number of tweets, based upon media picking up your story, based upon what are some of the other metrics, LinkedIn, there's a whole variety. And we're downloading a program, we're downloading data from Altmetric, which looks at social engagement. And I spoke to one of our faculty yesterday, and we're also looking at patents and this notion of who is getting patents and what is that diffusion of patents. So I think there's a lot of dialogue around, and I keep hearing this out of Europe as well, of rethinking how we should make decisions around promotion and tenure.
Mhm.
In fact, one of my colleagues is headed to the University of Reading in England on Sunday, and he's meeting a group from the Netherlands, Ireland, and England, and perhaps some other places. And they're going to have this discussion of these alternative metrics and what's going on at their respective institutions. So I love the conversation. I don't mean to dominate it, but I think it's very interesting. And certainly as scientists, we have to work transdisciplinary.
Yes.
I agree completely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a Twitter account. I have a Facebook page, professional. I mean, I tweet, I post, I do all that. I'm thinking of starting TikToks with my students. So yeah, I agree with that.
How many hundred followers you have?
Well, I honestly, I don't know. I only know on my YouTube channel, but that's a very scientific kind of, I have 650, which is not a lot, but for an enology, I mean, UC Davis has 670, so I feel good.
That's a beginning. I mean, we can see, right now, basically almost every day, I received some email from NSF, and every day is to highlight about the research that NSF support or something like that. So I can see, the importance of your research area.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any more comments? Some of the things I would like to ask is related to the looking forward. Okay, we talk about new technology. What we just discussed is part of that. And for example, about that fungus productions. I have some discussion, but Dr. Go is not here, so. Okay, I think, we don't have any more comments, so we can wrap it up.
I see a question about kombucha.
Question? Okay.
And crossing the line between mushrooms and wine from Dev. Well, kombucha is not really, if I may address this, is it okay?
Sure, go ahead.
It's not really a fungi. It's not a mushroom. It's a it's also called a SCOBY, which stands for symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. So it's a colony. It's a multi microorganism colony. The part that ferments the kombucha. So, but other than that, going over the fact that it's not necessarily a mushroom, there are some overlaps there. There is an alcoholic fermentation that happens during the production of kombucha, not to the level of wine, but certain to some alcoholic degree. Wine, though, depending on where you are in the world, and the definition of wine is usually from drink fermented from fruit, which is not the case from kombucha. In Europe, wine is clearly defined as fermentation of grapes and no other fruit. In the United States, is broader than that. It allows other fruit. The kombucha is not. It's based on tea and sugar added, and this SCOBY culture that ferments it. So the common aspect is that there's a fermentation happening and there's some alcohol produced, but other than that, not much.
I have one question from the industry. You know, today's world, some of the women, they want to enjoy the wine. However, they don't want the content of the alcohol so high. So, you know, the industry is asking, I mean, this is a startup industry, is asking how to, you know, is there any way to produce the low-level alcohol beverage for female population? Yeah.
Absolutely. There are ways of doing that. I assume this has to do with calorie consumption, because the majority of the calories in wine come from alcohol, as with any alcoholic drink. So yes, there are ways of reducing alcohol content in wines. There are enzymes that can help with that. There are filtration methods that can eliminate the alcohol from wine or greatly reduce it. But I think the simplest way of doing it, and the one that makes most sense, is to go back to practices that we used to have with grape growing, and that is not letting the grapes accumulate so much sugar. There was this trend starting to happen, particularly in the United States, the New World, this trend in wine production of producing higher and higher alcohol level wines. I'm not really sure why, but that's not necessarily a good thing. So the simplest way of doing it is just picking the grapes earlier. If you have the right balance, you know, everything else is right. Don't let them hang so much. It's just super easy to produce lower alcohol that way. And historically, if I look back at the old world, levels of alcohol in wines in the old world, meaning mostly Europe and some Middle Eastern countries, were way lower. They used to be, a white wine would be around 10% alcohol by volume, and that would be considered normal, and the red would be top 12%. Well, look at where we are now, and that was just done by timing of the harvest. So that's the easiest way to do it, the most non-interventionist way of doing it, but there are other ways of doing it too. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think since our time is up, so let's close the sections. Thank you again. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. This was a very interesting conversation. Thank you. It's fun.